Well, we'll call the community development meeting to order. First item will be public comment. This one is just going to be for something other than the sales tax. So I think, Mr. Davis, you want to talk something here? And then we'll come back to the local option sales tax.
My name is Ron Davis. I live in Wilmer, 313 Southwest 11th Street. I'm here to address three situations. First of all, the first is going to be some action on the proposed ordinance regarding sexual predators in their residency. An ordinance was introduced by Mr. Johnson. He was unable to attend meetings, not to his own fault, and because of that, that ordinance had been tabled. I do not find that that has been put on anybody's agenda since then. I have briefly talked about him, and I think his intention is to try to put that back on the agenda. I think we need to move forward on this. I guess the second thing that I would want to address would be the distance. And there were some questions of where sexual offenders, whether it should be 500 feet or more. And some councilmen were uncomfortable with this. And I can understand that. And if they feel uncomfortable with this, as I was uncomfortable with it, because I think that is the minimum. I don't think anybody else is that low. I think the norm is at least 1,000 feet or more. And my apprehension is that because we have the lowest, that we would be a red carpet for people wanting to come into our community that fall into this category. But on the same token, I guess I want to be open-minded enough to sit there and say, okay, if we are undecided, then let's do this to stakeholders and ask them. And I think our stakeholders would be people that operate daycares. I believe there are 60 of them in Wilmer. They're stakeholders. I think they would have an opinion on distance. I think the parents that bring their children to these daycare centers would be stakeholders, wouldn't be entitled to an opinion. I think our Board of Education, our school board, would be a stakeholder. I think our principals, our teachers, and for that matter, probably the parents of the students in our school systems would be stakeholders. I think that our churches and their boards and that have activities for children at night and at their churches would be stakeholders. So I think there are plenty of people that would be more than happy to put input in, and they are all stakeholders. And if we are undecided, because my big fear is that if this goes back to the city council, and they've been given a fair amount of time to sit there and digest this, and if they're still uncertain, then maybe these folks should get a hold of their council members, or that city staff should get a hold of these stakeholders and ask them their opinion to better decide what they want to do with this. The other thing is that basically one of the fears that were brought up by the city council last time is that what are you going to do with unprotected areas with high concentrations? We're there. If you read the paper in Walmart that we have a level 3 sex offender that is now going to be moving to the 600 block of Southwest 2nd Street, we already have one there. So now we have 2 level 3s on the same block. And not only that, but we are 1 block away from Rice Park. And Rice Park is someplace that you are looking at putting $706,000 of improvement in. And you have nothing to protect that park right now by any city ordinance. In fact, the person that is moving there, even under this ordinance, would be protected because he's there before the ordinance went through. So we are there. We need to sit there and make a decision on that before more of it happens. Again, I'm referring to the 720 people that a federal judge says have to be reevaluated that are in our system that, as far as they're being able to be released, that are sexual offenders, of which it is estimated that 25 to 35% should be released. Now, they're going to go someplace. And if you don't have an ordinance in place and you have a 500-foot district, they like our facilities here. And I think you as council members owe a quality of life issue to the people that live here. I think right now you cannot zone against it. I think right now that if you have a common kitchen and you have 6 bedrooms, that you can have 6 people there, of which only has to be disclosed a level 3 offender. Level 2s do not have to be disclosed except to daycares and to schools. Level 1s don't have to be. And we are talking about people that have, and this ordinance addresses people that are under the age of 16. So it doesn't apply to people that have committed sexual assaults on other people, but we're talking about people that are under the age of 16 or are level 3 sex offenders. So I think this needs to be addressed before we start spending that type of money on our park systems. And we're talking about nightlights, and we're talking about activities of consolidating our parks, and we have nothing, absolutely nothing, to sit there and prevent sex offenders from moving next door to any one of these. And I think it needs to be moved on, and it needs to be moved on quickly. I believe that it's a quality of life issue for people here. Now, they talk about recidivism. You're going, okay, let's talk about recidivism. May not be true recidivism by Department of Correction standards, but if you recall, I think Chief Phelps out there and said that we had 3 level 3 sex offenders in the city of Willmar, of which 1 is in jail. As of probably April 16th, he is still in jail. So that tells me at least 33 1/3% of closely vetted, closely watched, level 3 sex offenders in the city of Willmar still don't follow the rules. So those are the 3 things that I would ask you to do. Is number 1, move forward with this. Number 2, come to the council meeting with a distance in mind. If you don't have distance in mind, there are resources. There are stakeholders that would be more than happy to have input on this. And number 3, you need to come to resolve on how far apart the level 3 or level sex offenders should be able to sit there in unprotected areas. So I think there's been plenty of time since this was introduced. I think that people have had time to sit there and think about it, and I think it's time to move forward with this. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That will be brought up later in this meeting. So. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll go to the backflow cross-connection program. Bruce, I see we have Randy Cardell here, our building official.
Yes. Chair Fagerly, members of the committee, staff recently has been working with Willmar Municipal Utilities regarding a municipal backflow cross-connection program. It is a mandate at both the state and federal level that the city address the potential for backflow and cross-connection into the potable water system. The ultimate responsibility lies with the purveyor of water, which in this case is the municipal utilities. The city of Willmar is required to have the program. The municipal utilities is the required body to set up and conduct the program. City staff has agreed to assist the utilities in establishing the database for the check valves or backflow valves, as the case may be in the city. Randy's got a pretty good database of that stuff, just working through a variety of projects and construction projects over the last few years. We know where most of this stuff is. We will require the assistance of a lot of the plumbers and people that have had access to the water system to identify all those locations. But once the database is created, it will be up to the municipal utilities to develop a structure for the inspection program. And it's my understanding that they have to be inspected annually. Is that correct, Randy?
Annually, correct.
Okay. And the cost to the city to get this going is virtually nothing. It's our staff time, and we've already met with utilities staff, and they understand their responsibilities, and we've agreed to offer them. What we're looking for at this point is for the committee to recommend to the council that the city initiate the mandated municipal backflow cross-connection program and to direct Wilmer Municipal Utilities to implement the program as the purveyor of water as defined in the law.
All right, any questions from the committee? So is this a building code regulation then?
It's related to the plumbing code.
Plumbing.
Randy can tell you where the actual citations are. You've got most of that information in your packet. I don't anticipate you read everything in there. It's pretty voluminous, but it just gives you a good up-close picture of how you can get cross-contamination and backflow into the potable water system at a residential level, commercial level, industrial, healthcare. There's a number of different ways that contamination can occur, and the codes have been changed to require this program to see to it that that doesn't occur.
So what does this mean to homeowners then? Someone will be coming into their home and checking?
Randy can address that better, but this is only where we've identified the location of a backflow valve or any cross connection, and that wouldn't involve the typical homeowners. Typical homeowners, when their homes are plumbed, they've got air gaps in their water softeners and water heaters to prevent that cross contamination or that back siphoning. And when we do our rental inspections, we follow up on all of that. So that's already addressed. This is going to be primarily at the commercial and the industrial level, the way I understand it. Randy, how might a homeowner be impacted by this? Would it be their sprinkler systems?
It'll be your residential sprinkler.
Come up to the microphone there, Randy, thanks.
Randy Cardell, I'm the building official for the city of Wilmer. When we do a final inspection on a house, typically the homeowner has spent enough money to pay for the house that he hasn't put in his lawn sprinkler system, and it comes in at some time later. And a classic example is they bring the water service into the basement, and now they put this valve in here, an atmospheric vacuum breaker, and it's meant to protect the city's water. The sprinkler heads, what are sitting up above, could be sitting in pesticides, it could be sitting in fertilizers, creating a back siphonage, whether it be a water main break, a fire sprinkler going off, or even flushing hydrants can reverse the flow of water. It can draw those contaminants into the city. So residentially, any property that has a lawn sprinkler system would similarly fall under this law, requiring that they be inspected and serviced on an annual basis. You know, we're talking cross-connection, and probably doesn't mean much to you, but I could give you an example of cross-connection, and that'll really get you thinking. Central Wisconsin, a mortuary, embalming table, a hose on an embalming table with an operating faucet. A building down the street has a fire, and the fire sprinkler and pump kick in, siphoning body fluids off of that embalming table into the city's water system. You know where the first place that cross connection was noticed? The drinking fountain in the lobby. Ideal story of cross connection. We need to protect our water system, and we'll have to initiate this program. The residential stuff is going to be tough. We're going to have to go through and determine who's got sprinklers and who's putting them in. Typically, the plumber who is qualified to put them in doesn't put them in a residential sprinkler system. It's the sprinkler contractor. And they're not a licensed plumber, and they're not doing it correctly. So we need to tighten that up. And this will be part of this program. As far as all of the commercial stuff, this building has several backflow preventions across the street, more, this cooling tower out in the back. Those are the issues that we can address commercially. My plumbers are willing to work with me to give me their databases on what devices, when they were serviced, who does them, and where they're located. So we can help MUC develop the program that they're required to do. And we're willing to work with them.
So if you have an underground sprinkler system, someone will be coming to check that.
Someone needs to look at that, absolutely. And we will have to police the neighborhood and find out who's doing what, and we'll have to make sure that when we do a final, we'll ask the question, are you putting a sprinkler system in? And a good means of keeping track of this is making the people putting the sprinkler in and putting this valve in pull a permit, so we get it inspected and we get it entered into the database. And that's how many municipalities do it.
So is there a fee then to have an existing sprinkler system looked at?
Well, a typical, I get receipts from all over from plumbing agencies that are doing work within the city here. And a commercial one, when they have to go in and test it, runs about $150. A repair or rebuild runs about $300 on up, depending on the size of them. We did include in this packet a sample ordinance from a city that's probably being modeled as probably one of the best cities for a backflow prevention program, and I believe you have it in your packet. And you can see there's many methods of enforcement. The letters coming from MUC telling them your device is due, please have it done by this date, failure to comply, the second letter, failure to comply, another letter. And yes, there are fees and fines attached with this. I mean, it wouldn't take much to ruin the city's water system with given the right chemical. And we've got lots of chemicals in town,
Oh, I know in our neighborhood, there's plenty of.
many of them. And the one that's outside and up 18 inches above the lowest sprinkler head, not an issue. It'll never have a problem unless it fails. And if it's not tested for failure, this is where we'll have pesticides and lawn chemicals and that brought into our systems. We have plenty of water main breaks, and we're running water different directions all the time.
So you'll be getting cooperation from local plumbers then?
From anybody that's servicing RPZs or backflow devices in the city, yes. And as the program gets more and more evolved, we should get a pretty good handle on it for complete protection.
Staff will not be doing the inspections. Once the database is set up, we will continue to provide the utilities with the information they need to keep their databases up to date as possible, but it will be up to the utilities to make sure that each property is inspected, and that will not be done by utility staff either. It will be done by professional plumbers that will have to test it and certify it.
Audrey, you have a question?
Yeah, is this something new? I see the dates on the material you sent out are 2012 and 2015. So were there changes to?
Some of that is the AWWA, which is a
Okay.
national standard, and it's a very explanatory program. It tells you all of the devices, what they do, what can happen. It's pretty much a standard. The new plumbing code requires it,
That's the
requires complete
2015?
testing of it, yep.
Yeah, it was the
Okay.
2015
That's the
plumbing code
2015.
that triggers
Okay.
it, yes.
Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cardell, for answering these questions for us and explaining this a little bit better. I'm just wondering, is this proposed program, Bruce, is it all encompassing from day one, or is it something that can be taken in stages, like, say, looking at the commercial/industrial aspects of it first before actually implementing the whole homeowner side? Because it's just a guess on my part, but when the public that has personal irrigation systems, learns about it, there's probably going to be some pushback. People don't like, they don't like the government typically coming in and telling them how things need to be changed.
Right, and I understand what you're saying. It will take time just to build this program. We're not going to have a database that the utilities can operate off overnight. I could see it taking 2 to 3 years to build this process up.
Okay.
And from a practical standpoint, I think the initial focus will be to identify commercial and industrial situations, and the residential will follow. So it's not gonna, we're not gonna be out in the neighborhoods, and if somebody could bring us an absolute foolproof list, that'd be great, but this is gonna be a trial or error discovery type of thing. If we had a drought this summer, it'd be easy because we could just drive around and see who's got the green grass. Then we'd know who has the systems, but I don't anticipate that's gonna be the case. So it'll take a while to build that database. We don't expect that there's gonna be a huge amount of activity for quite a while
Okay.
on the inspection
And
side.
it'll begin incrementally. It's not all just going to come like a tidal wave.
That would certainly be our expectation. I don't know how you could do it any differently unless you just waited until you had the entire database built and then dropped the whole program like a hammer on the city. I think we're going to need to build into it, and the utilities is going to have to build into it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you.
Tim?
Do we have any, I mean, is there any testing going on now to tell us whether or not we have any of these backflow issues?
Oh, I have a whole file of them that I got from Boss Plumbing, Allied Mechanical, Wilmer Plumbing and Heating, Brad's Plumbing. They send me a receipt stating that this device at this location was serviced and tested. This is the test results and the date.
But we don't have any evidence in-house of contamination to
No,
date.
no,
That may exist at the utilities level, Councilmember Johnson, but because,
Yeah, that's my question. I mean, are we in good shape right now?
well, I've had one
yeah, and I
since I've
think
worked
that's the
here.
time to start it, is before we have it.
Right, oh, I agree. I don't have a problem with what's being, what we got to do. I understand, we don't want this problem, so.
Recently, we just went through all of the Walmart store and replaced all of the vacuum breakers on their sinks in their kitchens and delis that dispense soap, where they're actually, when they run water, it dispenses soapy water. Well, we're mixing the two right there, and without any backflow prevention, that could easily be contaminated. I just got reports that all of those have been serviced. Since I've worked here, Tim, or Mr. Johnson, we have had one reported case where a maintenance man went into a healthcare facility and took it upon himself to service an RPZ, and we got complaints about sanitizing agents in their drinking water right in town here. So it happens. And it happens everywhere. Look at Flint, Michigan.
I understand. Thank you, Randy.
If the committee wants to do this, we need a motion to forward it on to the council on Monday.
So moved.
Or second?
Second, and then I have a question.
Further discussion, huh?
Two questions. So is the motion to see an ordinance, are we talking about a new ordinance, or what's the motion actually to do again?
The motion is to direct municipal utilities to initiate the program by law, because they sell the water. They're responsible for it. I would imagine that it will result in an ordinance, and we'll have to work out that exact ordinance process with the utilities, but I'm sure the ordinance will be coming back through council. Well, obviously, it'll have to come through council, but whether it comes back through city staff or through utility staff, we'll have to work that out.
Okay, so this is just to get it started?
Exactly.
Then just a follow-up comment to Councilmember Plowman's statement. But for people who are putting in new sprinkler systems, will they be advised so that it's not something that we do, I mean, once this program's in place, so it's correct for people who are doing it now
I would
versus coming back 3 years from now and saying you got to fix it?
Well, because we don't issue permits for sprinkler systems, we don't have any way to control that. I would certainly think the installers know what's proper from an installation standpoint, and the plumbers do. Generally, the plumbers aren't doing these systems either. They might stub the lines out and then the system's installed by a sprinkler contractor. But things should be done correctly, and the people should be properly advised. And if we become aware of new ones, we'll certainly follow up on it.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So do other communities who have this in place and have these ordinances, do they do permits for these types of things or not?
Does Owatonna do sprinklers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so that might be something that might need to be coming down the road too.
We have the capability of doing it.
And there again, I could see a very minimum basic fee, so we could simply go on site, double-check the ultimate connections and the backflow prevention systems that are in place. And then by doing that, we've automatically got the data to update the database. So,
Okay. Thank you.
So just clarification, once you do have it inspected, you still have to have it inspected every year, every 2 years, 3 years?
I believe the plumbing code calls for an annual inspection. It's-
All right, we got a motion on the table. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right. Now we'll go to the local option sales tax. Now I'll ask for public comment on that, if someone would like to talk. Anyone? Mr. Schultz, do you want to say anything?
Lauren Schultz, 901 Irene Avenue, Southeast. The public sales tax, everybody pays for it. But if you don't use public sales tax and use property tax, then only the property owners pay for it, everything. Gets to be quite a burden. So with the population and people coming to Wilmer to shop, everybody pays. But what I called Ziegler's and I asked him, because my offer to the railroad engineer was $8 million out of the 8 banks in Wilmer to put $8 million worth of equipment on that railroad job out here to make the water holding ponds and whatever they needed to do. So our 8 banks in Wilmer would be involved in our community instead of shut out from doing business here. So I called Ziegler's and asked them who gets the 1% sales tax. If I bought in St. Cloud, be there. Minneapolis would be there. And I asked them who would get the 1% if I bought it here in Wilmer. Said Wilmer would get it. Substantial amount of money. I don't have any money. We don't have any money to fix the water issues. We got a 60-foot washout down here that we haven't fixed. Our senator said there's nothing allocated for it, and we're going to build. And we need to fix that washout before that house falls in it. So if you want to give the state auditor back her $1.8 million that you got, we'll fix the water issue. The banks will put up the money because you're working out there in marginal land where it's very wet and you're going to have problems, and we have to make room for the water. And this county's never used the CP39 form to hold the water on any of the upland from Pennock all the way to Candio High. And that's why we got a problem. They aren't funding it. It's been here since 2008. So if I don't get this on there, you put it out on bids. The railroad engineer already said he's going to work with the big companies out of the cities. There goes the $50 million. And any cost overrun will be our burden, just like the sewer project. And we can't afford another hit. Not like that. That's the bottom line. We need to do business here and survive. We got bills to pay. Lots of bills. The equipment is good for more than one job. It's got a 3-year warranty. And I said the job had been done in 2 years. Well, I said, you ain't dug a test hole out there yet. Because that 26 feet, they didn't find it down at that plant they built out there, Pepsi, was just mush. And the ditches are over 100 years old. They'd never been remodified to hold more water. And I plugged everything from Candio High coming into Wilmer. And I had 14 dams on one farm. And, well, the attorney come and made me take out the 14th dam, the biggest one on the whole complex. Not good. The people were good enough to put up their farm, but circumstances, because of what's filed in the courthouse, couldn't do it. So I got to make room for that water. Every farm downstream from there is getting drowned. and we haven't used the CP 39. In the Crow River Watershed District's been using it since 2008, and they all know about it. Nobody will do nothing. And the Hawk Creek Watershed District hasn't used it ever. And I got it from Dave Frederickson, the Commissioner of Agriculture. I've had it for 4 years, and nobody will fund it. But I can fund it by buying the $8 million worth of equipment, put it on that job, and get it paid for in 2 years. Can offer you unlimited hours on it because it's under 3-year warranty and is bank financed, and that won't change.
So have you talked with the county engineer, Mel Odens, or the city engineer?
Yeah,
Nothing gets done?
nobody wants to talk about the water issues because there's no money. We got to make our own. I
So,
built all the major dams in this county, so I know where the water comes from and where it's going. In '97, we saved Granite by 1 inch. I don't want that to happen here.
so you're on record to say you're for the local option sales tax?
Well, it's the only way we can raise money and distribute it evenly,
Okay.
because otherwise you're asking just the landowner, property owners that pay taxes to pay it all, and that won't work. It's got to be dispersed wide. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Who's going to lead the discussion here? Larry?
Mr. Chair, Fagley, and committee members, I have a PowerPoint presentation, and you've seen this before. Please indulge me. I'll go through it rather quickly. Dave, is it locked up? Little history on the Wilmer sales tax. In 1999, the city had a $4 million local option sales tax for the Candy Ojai Regional Library. In 2004, the city had an $8 million for the expansion of the Airport Industrial Park hiking trails and biking trails, the Blue Line and Civic Center connection, and that was removed in 2012. Little information about the local option sales tax. It's regulated by Minnesota State Statute 279A.99. It's subject to approval of the voters at a general election, which is, the next one would be November 8th, 2016. The city must pass a resolution that states the city's approval, the proposed tax rate, uses, total revenue to be raised, and the length of time to be in effect. And the proceeds of the tax must be designated for a specific improvement at least 90 days before the referendum. In 2004, the ballot question looked like this. Should the city of Wilmer finance the completion and expansion of the Airport Industrial Park, hiking and biking trails, connection of the Blue Line and Civic Center buildings, and purchase of that portion of the Wilmer Regional Treatment Center campus west of Highway 71, approximately 60 acres, with a 0.5% sales tax on all taxable transactions occurring within the city of Wilmer? The projects have an estimated cost of $8 million. The sales tax will expire upon payment of all bonded indebtedness issued to finance the various projects, anticipated to be 7 years from the date of implementation. And then a yes and a no vote. Right now, there appears to be a multi-community effort to pursue a sales tax. This is not a collective effort, it's an individual one, but the city of Spicer and New London have mentioned interest in pursuing something at the same time. In Wilmer, the local option sales tax would generate about $2.2 million annually, approximately $23 million if it was a 10-year from 2018 to 2027. Projects of regional significance. Staff, following our retreat, identified the following 10 projects, and obviously there may be others. Number one, a community center backup emergency operations center, which would include offices for the Mid-Minnesota office and the RAC 8 studio. Number two, Swanson Field lighting improvements. Number three, Civic Center refrigeration improvements. Number four, Robbins Island Regional Park improvements. Number five, year-round ice arena facility. Number six, multifamily workforce housing incentive. Number seven, a regional emergency training center. Number eight, curling club facility. Number nine, Block 50 parking structure. And number 10, the Y South End overpass. Staff identified what they thought were the higher priority projects, that being the Civic Center refrigeration system, Swanson Field lighting, both of which are projects that are in desperate need of being done, and then the community center. On May 10th, the council will hear, or the Public Works Committee will hear their first report on the facility study. And this is an example of one showing that the community center has a lot of functional and economic obsolescence, and the cost to repair may exceed the value of the building and may need a further look at something maybe to replace it or update it. Staff has identified some next steps, placed the local option sales tax on the April 18th agenda, which we did, and then decide if the council supports pursuing the tax, and two, to authorize staff to work with a consultant to estimate project costs and the priority. And then in June, evaluate and select projects. July, adopt a resolution and ballot question. August through October, inform residents. And then ultimately on November 8th, the electorate would decide. We presented this to the City Council, and the City Council had three additional ones. Number 11, a field house. Number 12, transportation. And number 13, the Becker Avenue plan. At the retreat, we identified some things to implement. And number one, the retreat outcomes implementing would be pavement, trails, and park plans, to implement those. To implement hiring an HR director and review organizational study and compensation plan. Implement the local option sales tax. Implement the Civic Center refrigeration system improvements. Implement reviewing the housing plan and take initiatives for developers to get additional housing. And then network with utilities on facility options. At the retreat, we had items that we wanted to study. The downtown, staff worked with the business community to learn about more of what we can do. To study our public image and what we can do. Facility plan, assessment department merged with the county, evaluate the local option sales tax levy, other possible area collaborations. And then on the far end, just to consider, would be a dashboard with educational models and examples, leveraging other resources and review available cash, 5-year financial plan, be proactive rather than reactive, streamline council packet, maybe action items only, board and commission roles and work, use of data to review budgets, and committee structure and work sessions. The local option sales tax staff process to identify projects of regional significance. It started with the retreat, where we identified the local option sales tax as what we call a priority. We identified the historical lost local option sales tax information. We quantified funds to be generated. We met with community stakeholders. We identified projects of regional significance, and then we brought it twice to the City Council for direction. And at the last City Council, they referred it on to the committee here tonight. Staff met with these community stakeholders: the school, the county, Rice Hospital, Ridgewater College, Willmar Municipal Utilities, the EDC, Mid-Minnesota Development Corporation, and the Chamber of Commerce. At the last meeting, the council was a little frustrated of not having some numbers to gauge the amount of cost for various projects. And so we put this slide together. Now, this is done at a staff level. It's not done by architects or engineers, or there's not a high level of work. On your buildings, architects estimate a good quality public building at $350 a square foot. So the proposed community center building would be about $7,910,000. The proposed parking ramp, 480 spaces, that was proposed in 1989 for Block 50, that ends up at $8,640,000. The Robbins Island Regional Park, in the park plan, it identified $7,918,000 of improvements. And to the right, staff has identified a priority of $2.5 million. The next one, Swanson Field and Lighting Improvements. In the park plan, it identified $7,183,000 of needed improvements, and staff targeted $2.5 million towards that. New arena, third sheet of ice, that's at $250 a square foot to $6,600,000. The Y County overpass, right now, if the county can get the state to shift some money, there still appears to be about a $2.5 million gap. And so that reflects that. The curling club approached the city about building a facility, and we came up with about at $200 a square foot, about a $4,320,000 project. Their number is probably about a half or maybe even a third of that, but our architect says that $200 a square foot would be a reasonable number for that type of facility. And in the school bond issue, there was a field house at $152 a square foot. That's $7,750,000. The council mentioned adding transportation as a use, and that number can be pretty much as big as you want. We put $50 million. And then the Becker Avenue project, that one is kind of an unknown number too, but we targeted $10 million. So in total, the list that we have is $115 million. And as you recall, $23 million could be generated over a 10-year period. Staff identified the community center and the Robbins Island, and just like to say that one of the concepts on rather than spending $2.5 or maybe even $3 million on updating the refrigeration system in the Civic Center, the thought of building a third sheet of ice that would have a modern updated refrigeration system, and then possibly the older blue line could be used could be sold to as a curling facility. And so net that may be a smart investment for the city. So the question before the council was if staff had a good process, or if there was more work to be done, and so that kind of brings us here tonight. The staff process was to select projects of regional significance in April and May, and hopefully we could prioritize in May, authorize staff to better define projects and costs. Right now there's 13 projects up there. There could be more, but really there's $115 million of projects there, and so it has to be honed down to maybe 2, 3, or 4, maybe 5 projects. Select projects in early July, educate and inform the public through August through October, and then the election on November 8th, where the general population would agree or disagree with what we were proposing, and then in 2017 to seek approval from the legislature. So staff is looking for the council, for input and direction, and if there is an alternative process to do we want to do a local option sales tax, and if so, what are the priorities? And with that, I'd turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Comments from the staff? Andrew?
Well, I'm not staff, but.
Or from the council?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and not only thinking about it, but talking to people about it. My neighbors, friends, business owners, people I work with, try to get the most broad perspective. And it seems like the answers that I get kind of really shake out in one of two ways. And the first one is that, well, the first observation is that, in the end, if the public wants it or if they don't want it, the beauty of it is they get to vote on it. So it's the voters' decision whether or not to adopt it or not. So where it really falls in our laps, so to speak, is how to give the best, most effective mix of projects or singular project that's going to appeal to those who are going to be voting. And from what I've heard, there's a definite split in terms of types of projects that there's support for. And I'm wondering if there's some way of combining those projects. And I saw back in 2000, what was it, 2000? The local option sales tax following the library.
2004.
2004, which dealt with the Blue Line Center related trails and other stuff like that. It seemed to me like they found a creative way to extend their money, so to speak, and extend the reach of the types of people that were going to be able to benefit from this. In my opinion, a local option sales tax should be something because everybody pays this. I mean, everybody that buys anything in the city pays the tax. Therefore, it's almost incumbent on us to find things that everybody also uses. Seems like the only fair way of doing it. My mind still goes back to the couple categories. The two categories that I get hung up on that I would like to see there would be first infrastructural, and I would break those down into two subcategories under infrastructure with increased spending and funding for our roads and streets, our pavement management plan. There's a lot of talk out there about the condition of the streets, and maybe it's not as bad as some people say it is, but I do believe it deserves attention. The second area under infrastructure, we know this buildings report is going to be coming back, although we haven't seen it. I think we all know the writing's on the wall for how that's going to look, and we're very soon going to be having the discussions of where we're going to come up with money for this. So the two under infrastructural that pique my interest would be road and street at a ratio of about 30% each. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, because the comments and the feedback that I hear, is opposite the other direction regarding community. What are we doing for community building and coalescing around community events and whatnot? And I think that's important too. The community center is one that sticks out to me, and then increased recreational initiatives out towards the proposed field house or what have you, different versions of that. But so I guess I look at it as kind of like a pie, and maybe presenting a pie that is the most palatable for the largest percentage of voters in Wilmer that will be able to utilize this money once they spend it, once it comes back.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Tim?
Can I interrupt quick, Mr. Chair? Sure. You gave 30% and 30% to your street improvements and municipal buildings. How would you allocate the other 40%, just so I got my notes right?
I think a third. 1/3.
20 and 20.
Okay.
So 30% road, street, 30% building improvement, 20% specifically designated towards the community center, 20% for recreational initiatives to be determined.
Okay.
That was just one humble guy's ideas.
Sure. Audrey, you have a
Yeah.
question?
Thank you, Councilmember Fagerly. Along the lines with what Councilmember Plowman is talking about, I'm very supportive of us taking the initiative to say we're interested in doing a local option sales tax for the right reasons. But one of the questions I would have on your proposal is what streets serve a regional purpose? Where can we do that? What buildings would serve a regional purpose? The community center, I can see the recreation and those kinds of things create a community purpose. But I'm curious about the streets and the actual buildings that you were referring to, what could be used. And maybe, I don't want to put the cart before the horse again here, but maybe if we pursue this, that's something that we could go back to the community and also to find out what things actually qualify for a regional purpose. And I don't know if you have any other thoughts about where you were at with buildings or streets as far as what qualifies as regional purpose.
Yeah, I guess I'd maybe have to take some direction from our professionals in terms of what qualifies as regional purpose. But I guess my mind went to the thought that, in terms of daily business and making sure everything, I figured when our facilities report comes back, I believe our city buildings really are kind of integral in the purpose of daily business and serving regional purpose. And I don't know if that's something that qualifies underneath this.
Is there some place we can get that clarified? Does the state have rules?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Plowman, I think that, you have quite a bit of latitude. A community center would be, obviously it was something of regional significance. City Hall probably wouldn't, and there's other means to pay for that. When you talk about roads and infrastructure, your local streets, probably are something that is more fitted for local property tax and assessments. There may be some other, such as the Y overpass might be a bigger, broader use of those funds that, would definitely be a use. Sometimes your roads and things like that are things that can be, the average taxpayer expects that they'll be paying for. But when you get to community centers and ball field lights and refrigeration systems, it'd be nice if the broader community that's using those could be helping pay for them.
Right.
I think you have a lot of latitude, and through a process, once you identify where you want to go, we can hone that down.
Okay, so something like like Ms. Nelson mentioned, like a regional thoroughfare, something, a roadway that could be considered a regional thoroughfare. I mean, that's not off the table. Exploring funding mechanisms for that through the local option sales tax?
I believe Mr. Chair, Councilmember Plowman, I believe other communities have paid for infrastructure, utilities, and streets with the local option sales tax.
Okay, all right.
Tim?
What may help, in fact, is the fact that Wilmer is a regional center in and of itself. And I think it would be recognized politically that many of the functions of a community this size are regional in significance.
Tim, do you have a comment at this time?
Well, I've got a big list here. And, those numbers are staggering. I do think that Swanson Field is a great facility. We've got a lot of things that go on out there. So that would be on my list. And obviously, our refrigeration issues at the Civic Center are just about, I think we've stretched our current facility's ability to produce ice to the max. That's in dire need. And I kind of agree with you, Councilmember Plowman, on the streets and roads. I hear that from a lot of people. I realize we have alternative ways to finance those, but the perception of the public is that we're behind on what we're doing. And, we don't assess it all. Some of the city pays some of it, so, and we have bonding limits. And as far as regional, I would imagine, although I think the answer to one of your inquiries about which roads, they would probably be our county state aid roads would have regional significance. They already help pay for some of those. Mm-hmm. But because of that, those are the roads that we've got in town that are probably in better shape than the other ones. So I don't know if that's, that's a good question, though, as to whether they have a regional purpose, the other streets. I guess I can't answer that. And I posed just the general question to Administrator Cruz earlier before this meeting started, so it's on my radar, but I'm just not sure. So as for, if I was to pick 3 off of this list, like I say, I like the Swanson Field. I think, we have the public, we have, our young people play ball out there. We have the Stingers, other activities, gets used by the high school. But as for the other one, I'm just not sure where I'd go. The why, that's a lot of money. And I don't know if that project lives or dies based on the city coming up with $2.5 million with what we need. I don't know about that. If it doesn't, then I would scratch that. But field house would be a nice amenity for the community, but the voters rejected that recently, quite recently. So I'm a little reluctant to put that on our list. It might be a bad idea. I don't know. I guess at the present time, that's my feelings on what
All right.
we're looking at.
Thank you. Well, for me, I would like to have a / community center field house. So then you could have seniors there, you have young kids, young adults, they're all there at one place. And we'd sell the existing community center. Could move Rack 8 out there and you could sell that building, so we have less to maintain. And we got to do something with the Civic Center with the refrigeration. So if we could sell one of those buildings to the curling club and build a new facility, ice skating, hockey arena, that'd be my idea. And then if there's money left for some streets, if it's legal, we could do that. Audrey?
Thank you. I'm hopeful tonight that, I'm hearing positive things, that maybe we can just have a motion to pursue the local option sales tax. I'm not ready to pick projects yet, and I really would like to see some community input. And I thought the information that came from New Ulm, I don't know if staff researched how they did that, but the community, New Ulm has an ongoing process that they ask the community to come forth with projects that the community wants to see supported. I think there's some things we have to do that are on our list, but I think to engage the community in this in some manner to help us come up with the right projects and to not just repair what we have, but to repair and enhance what we have to help bring more people and activities into the community. So as far as picking projects, I think there's lots of good ones, but I would hope that we could come up with some format to allow for the community to bring some projects forward with, whether it be kind of combining what you're talking about, or when you go back to Swanson Field, what else needs to be done in addition to the lights. I think the other thing that hopefully the community will realize that if we can use local option sales tax to improve these things, that will free up additional dollars for transportation, for buildings, for those types of things. So I really don't want to pick from the list that's been brought forward. I would like to see us give permission to move forward and somehow to give the community permission to help us come up with the projects.
Thank you. I agree. We need public input, but this is a start, and we'll find out if they like any of our ideas or not. So, Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to jump off the back of that idea, I do a lot of business down in Florida with their Parks and Recreation Department, and there was one city, I think the city of Aventura is their name. They were discussing the same exact thing, and what they decided to do, their community decided to, they sat down in their council, said, okay, we're going to decide what things are going to be in here, but we're only going to choose half of the projects. We're only going to choose half of the pie. The other half of the pie is going to be a community event. And so they created a community event, and they had an online poll, and they had a designated portion of time. So they said, and the city, for those options, they chose obviously largely infrastructural things, because that's what cities do really well. The other items that were chosen from ended up being parks and recreation type items, and it seemed to work really well. And then once they completed their pie, they knew the direction they were going, and it was a sell. I think it went through, it passed with 96% of the vote.
Okay. If I may.
Last night, we had Mid-Minnesota Development meeting, and we were informed that they belong to the Monkey Survey on the internet.
Monkey survey, okay.
And any community in the region, if they want a survey, you just pay the $300 and they'll do it. So that's a pretty cheap way for us to do a survey if that's the route we want to go. Audrey?
I just wanted to expand on the New Ulm. I don't know if did staff do any research on that information that was given to us? And if you have, I think it's important for the community to know, and also, I'm not set on what length of time we should do a local option sales tax for. I think in the New Ulm's example, they voted in for a period of time, and then they came up with additional projects that set it for an additional period of time. So, I mean, I'm hesitant to say we should do 10 years and X amount of dollars, because I think our needs are going to change over that 10 years too. But, so I guess I'd like to see us be a little more creative than just the 2.2 million or 2.3 million for a period of time, and come up with projects and say, all right, we need 5 years for this project, or we need X amount of years for this project, so that we continue to do, to do some things. So I think those are things that can be determined once we come up with the project, and, or with projects. So again, I hope that we'll make a motion. I don't know if it's appropriate to do that or what it should be, just to bring it to the city council next week, just to say we want to continue to pursue the local option sales tax and to look for projects from the community.
Is that your motion?
Mr.
Larry?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Nelson, I did look briefly at the New Ulm situation there. They have an ongoing sales tax, and they have a couple of years left on it, and they're talking about, okay, when this expires, what are we going to do? And right now, we're kind of under the gun getting ready for a November 8th election. And so staff, we talked to a number of different entities as shown in the slide presentation. We've talked about the possibility of having some kind of community event, and you could have projects on whiteboards, and you could put dots on them. But there's a lot of maybe special interest groups that would rally and maybe get their dots, whereas some other ones wouldn't maybe fare as well, and they maybe wouldn't be attend as well, so to speak. So I guess as staff, we're looking for some ideas too from you on what kind of process would you look at, like to engage the public and expand the list that you have there, or even to prioritize, the items there. We're open to ideas, and we don't pretend to have all the answers.
So the New Ulm one, they have to sunset, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
But they're gearing up so that there's not a lapse, and as I understand it, it has to be off for a year, and they're trying to minimize the time, as I understand it, that it'll be out of effect.
Because I know Rochester, that's ongoing. That's forever.
Your cities of the first class, I believe, Duluth, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Rochester all have ongoing sales tax.
Yeah.
Nice.
Audrey?
Could we do an ongoing sales tax? And if we, how does that work with coming forth with projects? So if we, how do they do that?
I think
make it ongoing.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Nelson, I don't believe they have specific projects. It's just an ongoing revenue source that they decide as they go down the path on what they're going to spend it on.
So is that, I'm not suggesting we do that, I'm just merely asking, is that something that communities our size do?
I don't believe the legislature has
Allows it?
approved any of that beyond the first-class cities that
Okay.
I'm aware of.
Thank you.
I think that'd be a bad situation, have an ongoing one. You got to have
Got to have the
the-
project.
Right, but I mean, the voters have to have faith in you,
Yep.
too, so.
I will make that a motion just for the first part, just to recommend that we pursue a local option sales tax.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? Tim, you look like you're thinking about something.
No?
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries, so we'll see what happens on Monday night then. Audrey?
Can we also perhaps make a recommendation to come up with a way for the community to be involved? Maybe it's more than one thing. I'm not concerned about special interest groups. I think if there is enough people interested, they will come and represent some of those. Maybe we have to find more than one format to do that with. Could we also make a recommendation to do that? Both electronic and community?
That's big.
That would be good. Do you want a motion for that, too?
I think we can talk about that on Monday.
Well, I'm just concerned time-wise that we,
They could bring options on Monday.
options on Monday, have a way to do that?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Nelson, staff will brainstorm and try and come up with a number of different ideas. SurveyMonkey is a good tool, but to do that, you have to have email addresses, I believe, to reach the end client, and I'm not sure exactly how we'd go about that on a random community-wide basis. But there, no dumb ideas. There's just maybe there's some type of social media that.
Help us out.
Social media, newspaper?
Social media, newspaper could help us out. We got, I mean,
You mean the West Central Tribune?
.com, wctrib.com.
Yeah.
There's a plug. Yeah. Electronic poll.
But
I
yes,
think-
we'll try and come up with ideas, and I would ask everybody else to do the same.
Okay. I think I'd feel more comfortable if we just had a motion to instruct staff to come up with with some options to engage the community, some different types of options, and to bring that forward on Monday also.
Did you make that motion?
Yes, I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Who was that second?
Plum.
Andrew? All right. Next item, Building Safety Month proclamation.
Yeah, May has been designated as Building Safety Month. One of the things that we'd like to do locally is to have the mayor issue a proclamation of May as Building Safety Month. It recognizes the significance of codes and certainly recognizes the work that our codes people do in the course of their jobs, working to keep the public safe and healthy. We have a proclamation prepared, and whether or not you want council action or not, or if we can just directly go right to the mayor for that proclamation, I guess would be the choice of the committee.
What would the committee like to do? I'm sure the mayor will do it if you just ask him.
We could make a motion to recommend that the mayor issue the proclamation for the month of May as Building Safety Month.
Second.
Usually, they do that at the beginning of the meeting, correct?
That is true. I see no
usually
reason
at
why
the
we
end.
can't, why he couldn't just do it as part of the community development minutes presentation.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right. And Randy and your assistant will be there or not? If you want the recognition, it's up to you. Old business, anything on the Y project?
No.
Okay. The ordinance for the sexual predator?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to, we had a proposed ordinance that was drawn by the city attorney, and it was previously presented, or moved on from this committee to the city council, but was tabled there. So I would like to, that ordinance has been amended slightly, adding a couple of provisions. I handed out some copies. The provisions added would add a restriction with respect to not allowing sex offenders to reside in proximity to one another. In other words, basically, if one is meets the requirements of the ordinance for establishing residence in the city, a second or a subsequent offender could not live within proximity to that person is basically what the additional items are on the ordinance. And I guess I would make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they reconsider this ordinance at their upcoming scheduled meeting.
Second.
Second? Okay. So the one you're looking at is G, 10-76G.
Yeah, it'd be section 10-76, subpart G,
Okay.
and also 10-78, subpart A.
So do you have to have a distance in there for close proximity?
I believe the distance is the 500 feet that's used otherwise in the ordinance,
So they're
similarly,
Okay.
by reference to the other
And
sections.
do we want to leave 500 or go to 1,000 since most of the other communities have 1,000 or more?
Well, that could be discussed at the council meeting, what they want to do, I suppose. I have no problem with, if we want to recommend 1,000 feet, we can include that in the motion.
I would prefer the 1,000 feet.
I would make a motion then that we amend the prior motion by not only moving forward with the new ordinance, but amending the distance prohibition from 500 feet to 1,000 feet where it appears in the draft.
I can second that one also.
one more question.
Andrew does first.
Okay, just so that I'm understanding this correctly, there are radiused areas, churches, schools, daycares. There will also be radiuses around the offenders themselves?
Yes.
Okay. Had to wrap my brain around that one a little bit, but that's creative.
Audrey?
Yeah, I had written down a couple of things just that I think would be helpful for us to have on Monday night. Again, the map, I know we had it before, but I think it would be helpful for the community to see what a map looks like with the radius that's being recommended.
You want the 1,000-foot map?
That's what the
Okay.
motion was. I think also it would be helpful to know what other communities, I think our city attorney I think there was information out there before, and I think the city attorney had some information on that too, with other communities that have this ordinance, what the distance is that they are using. And then if the council could receive all of this information in the packet to be reviewed prior to Monday night. I mean, we've got copies of it here now, but if it doesn't come out so that the council gets it, everyone gets this?
The new ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we got it tonight, but if everyone can have access to it so that we don't say on Monday night we haven't had a chance to read it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I can send a digital copy to the administrator.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can do that when I get home. I've got it on my computer.
And then one other thing that's still been, that I've been asked again about is the licensing. And I realized, I mean, this started over what we thought was a licensed facility. It's my understanding that facility may not actually be licensed. I know there are 2 licensed facilities on Trot Avenue, but I'm still getting questions from members in the community about what type of license does a facility have like that? And is that under Department of Human Services, Department of Corrections? You know, group homes have procedures and licensing things they follow. So I guess the concern that I have is we started with what we thought was a licensed facility. I don't know that it is. And if all it has to do is meet our rental ordinance, I want to make sure that what we're doing is actually, could someone else have a licensed facility?
The way this ordinance is written, Councilmember Nelson, it really doesn't matter if it's licensed or not.
I understand that, but I think the question still is out there that could we have another licensed facility? And what license do they follow under?
A licensed facility for
Yes.
whom?
For sexual offenders. The home that brought this to our attention, we were told was set up as a licensed facility. So what license do they have and what regulations does it follow?
Okay, well, I think we were able to dispel the notion that that was a licensed facility. That was pretty much smoke and mirrors, to the best of my knowledge.
But the two that are on Trot are licensed. So where does that license, where do you see that license and what?
What are the
rules and
facilities on
regulations?
Trot that you're referring to?
I
Who are
believe
the
they're owned by the same company.
And they
What
are
I was
licensed
told.
for, and
I'm not
who
sure.
lives there?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they are just daycares or licensed residential facilities. That's a pretty broad
But isn't there
category
some
by
way
the
that
state.
staff can find that out if there is a specific category of license for sexual offenders?
We
That's the
have
question.
tried to find that out, and we have found no evidence that there is a specific type of license for sex offenders. We cannot find out from the Department of Corrections that anything like that exists, and it would not be regulated by the Department of Human Services if it was specifically targeted to people with a criminal background.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the Department of Corrections doesn't have a licensing.
We have been unable to find any facilities that are licensed by the Department of Corrections or evidence that they have a program to license residences. If they do, it's not something that's readily apparent from research within the Department of Corrections that we've had access to. So unless, there may be someone within that department that knows how they do things that are different, and it may not be something that is known to the public if they're licensed in a different way. I'm not sure how we would really find that out unless we could get somebody deep enough within the agency that would be able to share that information with us, and we haven't found that information yet. We can keep digging, and,
Okay. It was just an ongoing question that's still been out there. I understand it doesn't affect what we're doing in the ordinance, but I think it was a reason that this ordinance was put together. And so I think the question is still there regarding licensed facilities.
I will ask the simple question of the Department of Corrections. I will try to get to the right person and ask, does the department license residential facilities for persons with, criminal backgrounds or for released criminals? I don't know. I don't know how you'd want to. These people are going to be convicted, obviously, the ones we're talking about. They've been through the legal process and have been convicted and served their sentence and have been released. So we need to find out if there is any type of residential facility that would be geared directly towards those type of released sex offenders.
So what we're doing in the ordinance would prevent just a rental property from being able to house multiple sex offenders, correct?
Absolutely. If you've got the separation distance requirement in there, it will do that. I wouldn't say that it won't get challenged, but anything can be challenged. And I think that there's these laws from other cities that have been similarly crafted to regulate the residency locations have pretty much gone unchallenged. And at some point, there may be a tipping point when there's enough legislation by municipalities that someone steps in and makes decisions for the municipalities. But as it stands right now, I would say the city's ordinance as offered by City Attorney Scott and with the suggested amendments from Councilmember Johnson is probably enforceable and sustainable. So I think it's a good step in that direction. But I will try to get that answer from the Department of Corrections and have that on Monday.
Well, both senior housing, group homes, all of those have to, foster homes have licensing requirements and guidelines that you can
Yep.
go to the state of Minnesota and you know what what they have to do. I'm just concerned if there's another category that we're not aware of and how it would fit into what we're doing.
Okay, I will try to get that question answered.
So we have a motion on the table to forward this ordinance with the revisions to the council on Monday. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. All right, any new business?
Just to, if Mr. Peterson has any community updates of things going on?
Staff continues to work with the school on their project. We have seen some preliminary site plans and some civil drawings for that project. It's pretty complicated, and it'll be a while before permits are issued for the new school. Mr. Cardell has gotten the process going at the middle school. Those permits have been issued, and that work is underway. We continue to work with the commercial developer, and we're getting very close to receiving a plat application for that commercial project down on South First Street. You may have noticed if you were down there this last weekend that the old Cornelius household has been demolished north of Slumberland, and that will be redeveloped for commercial purposes. We have a meeting set up for Monday with Dooley's and their contractors regarding their industrial park project, so we hope to close on that real estate transaction within the next few weeks and cut them permits so they're in the ground by June 1st. A few issues have come up along the way, but we continue to work with them to resolve the issues as they arise. You brought up the Y project. We've initiated the environmental review process and continue to work with the other project partners to develop a final scope for the project, and ultimately the selected final scope will be somewhat determined by the environmental issues that are identified, whether or not it's the alternative 1 or alternative 2 with the relocation of Highway 12. We know what our preferred alternative is, but we can't select the preferred alternative until it's been agreed that the environmental issues are mitigable, I'm not sure what the word is, in that process. So just a lot of things going on, a lot of fronts, a lot of activity at the airport. We're having demand for additional hangar space. We are full out there, and so we may be looking at the state hangar fund to try to borrow some funds to construct another hangar, and that's a good program because they work with cities to help us make it cash flow. And so it'd be nice if we get another T hangar built out there as well.
Go ahead.
Sorry. The middle school, are they, with the expansion that they're doing, are they going to make their sidewalk on the west side handicap accessible? Because it is not now. I've asked that question before from a public works standpoint, and
I don't recall that question coming up in the plan review process at the staff level. Randy, have you heard anything to that effect?
That whole west side's going to be excavated for a stormwater retention basin, that whole thing. They will have to replace that with new entrances going out and a sidewalk going out the new west doors to the sidewalk on Second Street.
okay, so the Second Street sidewalk will get changed? Because now it's not handicap accessible.
Would define what part of the sidewalk's not handicapped accessible.
If you go towards,
As far as curb cut?
yep, Bethesda, if you go towards Bethesda.
That would be out of the scope of the school's project. That would be involved with a city street
It-
reconstruction?
I've asked the city, and it's not the city's sidewalk. I was told that it's the school sidewalk, but it's not handicap accessible.
Well, actually, the right-of-way is on the back side of the sidewalk. That's our sidewalk. That's the city's.
So we can make it handicap accessible?
Well, if you have the money, you can do anything.
Now I forgot my second question.
Okay, just a question on Cornelius property next to Slumberland. Is that a mini strip mall going there, or is it a freestanding?
It will be a freestanding building, I believe approximately 8,000 square feet, and they've got 5,200 feet leased, and they're looking for a tenant for 2,800 feet.
Okay. And then the shovel-ready program, have we heard anything yet?
Yeah, the soils work should occur out there, the soil boring should occur out there within a couple of weeks. I walked the site last Friday with an environmental consultant that's doing the Phase 1 environmental work out there. I know Aaron is spending time preparing the actual application document and making arrangements for the information to be reviewed by the site selector when they're out here, I believe in June. So that work is continuing.
All right,
My
thanks.
second question.
You remembered,
I
okay.
remember. The Y project, has the Highway 12 design been finalized yet?
No, as I said, we've got two options, and our preferred alternative is the southerly alignment that has not been formally selected because it can't be done until we're through the environmental process.
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn. We're done. I didn't need to.
Thank you. You could still